Hi everyone, Medina here from Arise Humanity, and I am very pleased to be able to introduce to you today the wonderful Lisa Rhodes. And Lisa's from Italy, and she's been doing some incredible research into trees and what is happening with trees on our planet, and also potential solutions for being able to work with trees. What does it mean as well, what we're seeing on the planet? So this is fascinating information, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
When you reached out, it was so interesting. I mean, there's no coincidences, and it's quite a divine, divine timing on everything. Is that I was really coming into sort of a more global understanding or inspiration of what is happening to the trees. I'm an American, so maybe I'll start a little bit, give you a little bit of background. I mean, you and I have known each other for a little bit. We've done a session, and love your energy, obviously positive energy. But and I'm an American who's now living more of my time in Italy, in the south of Italy, in a region called Puglia. And I love this thing when everyone goes Puglia, goes, is it Naples? I'm like, no, it's the heel of the boot. And they're like, are you sure it's not Naples? And I'm like, no, it's that little heel of the boot. It's fantastic. It's an agricultural region that was really known for their olive trees. And olive trees were the sort of the economic engine of the region. 1,000 years ago, it was energy and food. Now it's more food, and you've got olives and olive oil, which is obviously a key component in food production. When I came down here, it was actually in 2020, the first summer of the pandemic, was with a group of friends. We were in an area just outside of Lecce, which people should go look up because it's one of the most beautiful architectural cities in all of Italy. And if you don't know Puglia, you won't know it. There was the story about, you'd see the trees. We stayed on a property where the olive trees were dying. And you realize that the region was really, really saddened because of this blight against the olive trees. I thought, well, isn't that really interesting? So I'm on this property. It's this beautiful property in the middle of really kind of nowhere outside of Lecce. And I'm watching these trees and I'm looking at them, and they're dead on the top, and they're completely, it looks like they're dead, but there's this green growing around the bottom. I thought, no, I just kept staring and staring. And then I got from them, the trees, they're actually saying, it's like, we're not dead, we're not dead. And I know I sound like we can make a movie about how she's crazy. The trees
No, that's exactly.
Like, oh my God,
you can talk is exactly how I talk.
You can hear us. And I'm like, yeah, of course I can. I know you're not dead. I know you're not dead.
Yeah.
And that's actually what kind of brought me down there. And I bought some land, and I'm doing some agriculture. And because of my background, I've been in venture capital in healthcare. My job is to think about the future, what things are going to be valuable for the future.
Yes.
Opportunities, because it takes so long to gestate investments. Well, I've always been more creative. I'm not a quantitative numbers. I do numbers obviously a lot, but that my approach to investments are not about, well, just a return on investments, about growing it and what the thesis is and how you can create and what are all these ideas. So I'm always getting these ideas. And when I looked at it, I said, it's time to go down there and play around with things that I've learned through health investments and technologies, because they are all different types of technologies, and apply it across, because I've done it a little bit in animal and in agriculture, because I've been in some investments, because all of nature, all of organic things are the same. So, we look at it, and if you conduct a clinical trial, you first do it in vitro, which is a little bit like a plant option. And then you also go into animal studies. That's what a preclinical study is. And then you go into humans. So it's all the same. We're all the same. We're reflections and mirrors of each other with different approaches. And I, came down here, and everybody said, wow, the reason that the olive trees are dying is because of this bacterium called Xylella fastidiosa. And I thought, well, doesn't that sound like a, a great little spell cast that you put over something? The Harry Potter, I put Xylella fastidioso.
Sounds a lot like something like monkey POX or something.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So, sorry. And if I'm being a little crazy, I'm sorry. I'm just like,
No,
you have to laugh at this stuff, I'm like, this is how the ideas, this is how the ideas come. Okay. So I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
interesting. And so I'm like, that sounds so convenient. And I thought, okay, let's just do a little research. And listen, I'm not a scientist. I've got an undergraduate degree in classical music. I played the oboe, and then I have an MBA from the Wharton School. So I'm just like some kind of like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a quantitative genius, but I'm just one of those crazy enough to put the right and the left side together. And I look at patterns from the music.
It sounds like you've got a great balance of different modalities that you can bring together holistically to create a really good, analysis of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really about patterns, and that's all I do around everything I do. I'm like, oh my God, there's a pattern. Oh my God, there's a pattern, and it takes me 2 data points to make a pattern. And then, but how we females are, we extrapolate, and I see the chest moves a little bit further out. So when I looked at that, I started doing the research on it, and I found a lot of papers because this whole region, they call the province of the region of Puglia, is like a state within the country of Italy. They were supporting research papers. And I picked up a number of the research papers and started reading them. And you saw Xylella. But most of the Xylella things that they did, there were a couple things that were really intriguing. One is that they talk about how it's a vector from, meaning it's transmitted from a particular type of insect, which is called, this type of insect that would excrete a particular element. And then that there was one paper that came up, and it was financed by the region of Puglia, so government finance, that said, and I'll give you the scientific language. Whilst Xylella was present, it was never in sufficient quantities to damage the tree.
And sometimes, don't you think you're given like a furphy or something that takes you off the track of what's truly happening? If it's some sort of nefarious purpose of why it's been put there, then you are sort of rerouted in a direction that is not the truth anyway. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love it. You did the pun. You did the pun that I did to myself the other day when I was writing. You rerouted. I rerouted. Very good, Maddie. Absolutely. It's exactly that. But it's almost like what we look about in the news narrative. If everything always says the same thing as the headline, it's about what's underneath the headline. So I started reading it and understanding it. And there were a couple things that really popped out. First of all, there was that one headline said that Xylella is not. And that was one of the papers that was funded by this region. But the other part is that it talked about how that there was the creation of biofilms around the cells. And what was really happening to these trees is not that the bacteria was physically killing it, is that
I know what it was. I know intuitively it was putting like a film around it so water couldn't penetrate and it couldn't hydrate properly.
Exactly. They're dying of dehydration.
Yeah.
So the biofilm, and what was interesting is, like, for me, I worked on a biologic platform where this really bright scientist was creating a platform of quickly identifying vectors that would create biologic drugs, which I'm no longer like interested in any of these things. I, all moved on and all that stuff. But the biofilm thing was a reaction to exposure to antibiotics.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Wow.
So here you go. You've got the, because what we're trying to do here is, the most important thing is to identify what the root cause is. And sorry, I did the bad pun already. What is the fundamental root cause of what we're doing? Because the only way you can identify a solution is if you understand what you're trying to solve.
Yes.
And this is exactly what you were saying before, the intuition about human health. We're doing the same thing. Let's tell you, this is the cause of it. Whilst don't look here, because really it's over here. And we're fixing that and we're doing that, but we're not doing anything for the real cause. And that's really what I'm trying to get to here. But I think that the divine inspiration is really about is to say that A, they're dying of dehydration. B, that the biofilms themselves were the cause of that. And then, okay, so the biofilm causes is the protection of the plant against something, and that's the cause of the dehydration. So essentially you're destroying the arterial system. Doesn't that sound familiar about something else we're looking at on the human side? And then you like, well, so what's the cause of that? Well, an overexposure to antibiotics.
And there, and can I say that that's when you look at the history of antibiotics on the planet, and there's been this absolute the doctors have just prescribed them like lollies, and this over dependence on antibiotics in human beings. And like you say, trees and human beings, we're all related, we're all organically connected. And so it starts to impact the trees in the same way that it impacts people, where we've had this building like a sort of like an immunity resistance to all these high levels of antibiotics that we haven't needed, and that have been something that the drug companies have put out as another profit-making scheme that has been at the detriment of.
Let's get another cure, and guess what? It'll be a repetitive, reoccurring, cash flowing example. You're hitting it exactly right, and you're giving me more thoughts about that. It's like, so the overexposure to antibiotics. We've been told it's really all about the doctors putting it on humans, but the truth is that the antibiotic exposure is omnipresent in our environment from the soil up. And Dr. Zach Bush is an incredible researcher on all of that and the physiological implications to that, meaning that, our gut health, all of that. And he's talking about rebuilding the soil. So I was looking at those things. He's fantastic. So any viewer who wants to go and research what he's done, his work, I think is just extraordinary.
Yes, I'm aware of him.
Yeah, he's fantastic. But so taking all these different data points, like what was the biofilm? And I only knew about the biofilm because it was just these little things that popped up into the research because of that research that I did with this other inventor. And the biofilms are that overexposure to antibiotics. And do you know what's classified as an antibiotic?
This is going to just segue so perfectly into what happened to me yesterday.
Yeah, it's exactly what you wrote to me about yesterday. And that's, so I don't know, am I allowed to say it on whatever channel you're putting it on?
Absolutely. And I'd love to share how it segued into our.
Sure. I'll just say it's glyphosate.
Yes.
It's glyphosate. Yes. And for anybody who said, no, it can't be that, it's done this, go look up. There's actually, and I think you have a link that I sent to you about articles that show you it's patented, and it's patented for antibiotic exposure.
Yes.
So
oh my God.
So go ahead. So that's the link.
It's so fascinating. I had no idea that you were specifically going to talk about that. I knew that we would be talking about trees and holistic health of trees, but I had no idea specifically that you'd be talking about that. Yesterday, I was sitting in a park with a coffee cart and a group of people and dogs running around, and this fellow walks right past us, and there's these plants with virtually no weeds anyway, and he's spraying wildly, blithely, all these plants with Roundup, which is glyphosate. And we were all horrified because it was right where we were drinking. It's right where the animals were running around. And I said to him, what are you spraying? And he said, I'm spraying Roundup. He said, oh, it's okay. It's only glyphosate. And I said, oh my God. Looked up to the heavens in horror. And and then I said, who told you that? And he said, look, it's okay. It's the grounds person at the local school. Where, of course, they will be doing this around the children in the local school. So straight away, I got onto the school. I rang them. I spoke to the secretary. She said, oh, yes, I know about Roundup. And I said, please talk to these groundsmen. And I sent a 2-page PDF of all this information about how it destroys nervous systems. We have a friend who sprayed it as a grounds person and then lost basically all their healthy functioning and couldn't get out of bed barely and couldn't hold down a job again. And that was pretty much it for their health for the rest of their life after spraying. And they'd been told that there was a direct correlation by the doctor from what they were spraying to their nervous system. So, you know, we have a personal example of that there. So that is so fascinating that all happened right when I spoke to you, and
it's divine timing.
You're focused on this. It's just fascinating. And then I put all these things on social media about it. But anyway, I felt like I needed to do something to you know, let go of my frustration.
No, it's really important because this is the kind of stuff, it's from the ground up. Sorry for the bad puns again, but everything is from the ground up. So you think about it, all of our food comes from the soil. Our soil is what they've targeted. So let me continue with the thesis, because I think it'll further go into that whole idea about how everything is so connected and how we don't realize that those pieces, where the foundational pieces are. So I said, okay, so I understand what that is. I know that it's not the Xylella fastidiosa, but it is a cause of that. And I know why the narrative from governments are like that, because obviously they're the lobbyists that go in and these are these things, and they consider that you can no longer farm without these chemicals. And in a way, you can't, but they've also reached such a point of diminishing returns that it's all failing. The whole system is imploding upon itself because nature has to rebuild. And that's where Zach Bush's work comes in. So I thought, okay, so that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to target, you know, that now that I know what the issues are, versus targeting something else and not do it from a chemical or a toxic or something that is a drug point of view. I'm going to do it sort of holistically. Let me just go into another thing which broadens the whole tree thesis out, is to say that. So I was in the Dolomites. And of course, when you take some time and you hike in the woods with your little puppy, who is a good little hiker.
I've got one too. I've got a puppy too.
Is he a good hiker? Or is she a good hiker?
She's a good jump upper and licker.
That's a skill that people love that. People just love that. So I went to go get, like, in Italian, I'm gonna make fun of my people here. It's like, you know, it was Ferragosto, which is the biggest holiday. They say it's even bigger than Christmas. And I couldn't get a car. So I'm at this beautiful hotel, and the guy's driving me after the holiday's over to go get the car. And we're going through these mountain passes, and it's just like boom, boom, you know, all over. And the trees are just like, wow. But you're also seeing the trees are starting to die. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I'll ask this man whose first language is German, second language is Italian, and speaks a bit of English. And he starts telling me, describing that the trees started to die about 2 years ago. It's interesting. And and he goes, well, it's from overabundance of rain. But then this insect, and he couldn't tell me what it is. He had to go back and ask somebody else about it. It goes, eventually turns out to be the bark beetle. So another insect vector into a tree. And it's killing these trees. And, you know, part of the problem in the roads right now is that the trees are falling down. There's a lot of work that they're doing around the region. I thought, that's interesting. And as he described it, he goes, what is happening is that the beetles chew upon and eliminate the arterial system. That water goes up from the foundation of the tree to the branches and the leaves. Now, did we hear something like that before? Is there another story that sounds familiar to me? And I'm like, boom, 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 boom. That's exactly how the trees are dying in Puglia.
Can I say it sounds very bioengineered?
What? Sounds what?
Sounds very bioengineered.
There you go. My first thought was like, are these beetles even organic beetles? Are they infected with something? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, well, it's the same mechanism, which is also the same mechanism which they're doing with another thing that, you know, we've talked about, that people have talked about. So all of this, and we all know that they're not that clever. They have one sort of thing that they can do. And I realized, well, you know, that's interesting because the xylella started in the olive trees in California and then was brought over from the US because the US was the bad one and brought it to Italy. And that was like in the mid 90s, late 90s. But California had it for much longer. But Colorado has had the blight of the beetle in the Rockies 20, 30 years. And
can I tell you as well, this is again another interesting synchronicity. It's fascinating. My grandfather's son, so my grandfather married my grandmother sort of after, you know, anyway, but his son studied the oak tree in Victoria that was dying from a certain beetle. It was all down St Kilda Road in Melbourne, in Victoria. And he studied that like 30 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, to determine why this beetle was killing these particular oaks down that road. And I always remember that story.
And do you know what he found? You should go check on this now, see what he's found, because I would love to speak with him. It's so interesting. So you've got these insect vectors, you know, here's the pattern, insect vectors that are doing something to the arterial system, and trees are dying from dehydration.
Yeah.
They're all dying from the top down, whilst there's still this greenery and growth, which is why I'm like, they're not dead, they're not dead. They're really not. They are dormant. Another term that came in the research papers is that it's only the stressed trees that succumb to these things. It's like our immune systems, when we're stressed, we succumb to these things. So those are exposures. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? It's clear to me there's a pattern. That's the pattern I just identified. And what's also really interesting, I was like, so why are we going after trees? The trees are, you know, we've got trees and forests, and then we've got trees that are fruit-bearing trees, because the xylella also hits some of the other fruit-bearing trees in California. But the big one was the olive trees, because that's a big, you know, food source, the major food source and exportation in Italy, because you didn't really hear about it too much out of California. It wasn't enough to target them economically. I thought, okay, so I'm asking this question, you know, why? And you realize that trees are the perfect complement to planet Earth for humans. What do? They inhale carbon dioxide and they exhale oxygen, whilst we inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. We are in a perfect symbiotic relationship with these beautiful creatures on this planet, and we're all meant to be here. And so Earth was terraformed for that.
Yes, it makes complete sense, because if they're trying to depopulate us with this, which, you know, so many of us are increasingly realize is the agenda, why would they not target the other thing that helps create the oxygen and helps us to be alive on this planet? I mean, that sort of makes sense if you're wanting to bump off the
well, that's what I was thinking too. And I thought, actually, not only is it that, because a lot of therapy right now is doing oxygen therapy. And you think about, you know, when the people first started having this exposure to the pathogen, the pandemic, supposed pathogen, they were starved of oxygen. So yeah, that plays into it, right? So that's interesting.
That
starved of oxygen.
Because of so many examples of that. There was friends of mine that were at the Canberra protest, and they were hit by the RHOADS, you know, the frequency weaponry thing. And I don't know if I can say those words. I might have to bleep that.
You might have to edit that out. Yeah.
And so what happened was, with the female, she was so badly impacted by that, she nearly died, but they rushed her to hospital and she had to be oxygenated because it depleted the oxygen out of her system with that sound weaponry that went through the. And I was just watching a talk on it the other day too about how, this sound and light and all these different forms have been utilized by the dark as forms of weaponry, and we don't even have any sort of conception of the level to which they're doing this, but so many people can feel it, and even animals, and of course trees now too, like you're talking about. So I'm noticing a lot
of so could it be that, like what you were saying before, I don't know if it's, listen, I don't think it's the bark beetle that's killing the trees. I think there's either something in there or could be energetic weaponry on that. But the next part of the thesis is the next question sort of blew me away too. So I started asking myself, so then if we are perfectly symbiotic with this, and this planet was divinely made for human life to grow, why are we doing that? And I got the answer was they're terraforming this planet for something other than humans.
And can I say, it may, the thing that comes straight to mind, of course, is AI.
I don't even know if AI needs any kind of atmosphere. Of course, there's AI that is part of it, but the concept, and I don't know if everybody knows the terminology of terraforming, means that you take a planet and you create it for an environment that's suited for a species.
Yeah.
Earth was terraformed for humans.
Yes.
With a high level of oxygen and all the different species around, variety to support that. And we're all in this wonderful symbiotic relationship.
Yes.
But what do we think about that? Are they terraforming Earth now for something other than humans?
Yes.
And I thought, that's the broader agenda. So why, if we look at the trees as a global issue, as opposed to oh my gosh, it's just in the region of Puglia, or it's in Northern California, or it's in the Rocky Mountains, a little bit like cancer. We were told that, well, you either have breast cancer or lung cancer or uterine cancer or lymphoma. The truth of the matter is that it's cancer. And they've taken you away from the idea that it's cancer into, oh, it's the cancer of this, the cancer of that. Yes. And that's what we're doing. It's that global concept, which they do really well, which is separation.
Yeah.
And they're separating it and saying, well, it's a tree blight here, and it's from this bacterium. Well, the other one is from this vector of this. And I'm like, let's bubble it all up. Let's bring it all up. And that's the insight and the divine inspiration that I feel like I'm just really beginning to articulate and express. And I'm starting this journey of saying, here are the real causes, identifying the real causes. And all of them come down to, and it goes back to your point about what they're doing to target everything, is about frequencies. We're all electromagnetic, and it's all about frequencies. So let's play around with that.
Exactly. So we can use it for the good as opposed to the dark using it. That's exactly, yeah.
It was what was meant for it. There's always the inversion. So that's the thesis. And so then I started exploring around, and there are a number of really great researchers who've done quite a bit of work. And I'm just starting this journey because I know someone said, oh, you've got this, a friend said, you've got this great idea. You should write a white paper and tell them. And I'm like, that I think would be going and playing the game that's already out there. And you'd be fighting against a narrative, and they'd be telling you how wrong you are. A little bit like kind of what's happening right now. Let's show them. Let's just do it. So part of the reason I'm sure that I was guided to get some property here is I'm doing some research. I'm going to identify these things and play around with them. So I'm beginning this journey, and I was actually going to start a channel about the journey of what it is. So this could be a first introduction thesis of it, is identify the problem and say how we're going to do it, because there are two things. I mean, and I have no pride in like, I'm not getting these ideas. It's always divinely inspired. It's that you've got frequencies to play with, and then also pyramids.
I've got something to show you. You'll love
Okay, okay. I figured, I mean, you reached out because you intuitively knew something, so that, you know,
Yes.
I'm sure that this is no mistake that you know all of these things.
That's right. We're very synchronistically aligned with this. This is my pyramid. It's a powerful Benjamin,
Oh,
but I had it
wow.
specially made and I sit in it to meditate. Do you know the very first time that I sat in it to meditate, I just swayed involuntarily for like 15 minutes. I just swayed like this for 15 minutes. And it was just really doing something incredible to my energy. And I know that if you put things in pyramids, they don't age, or they last a very long time. It has great longevity. The energy inside the pyramid is incredible. And so I had it specially made, and it has sand in it, which is a conductor as well in the PVC pipe. So if anyone asks me where did I get it done, the lady, I'm not in contact with her anymore, but I asked her to make it, and she specially made it for me. But so you know, people can make their own if they're inspired.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like there's, you know, all of it's sacred geometry, which is what the pyramids are. And I picked that up because another little data point on something, somewhere I heard, and then I found the research paper that Russian scientists were building the largest pyramids and they're doing research, and anything they put into the pyramid had these different properties. And from an agricultural perspective, they are enhancing the yield of seed. So if you put seed inside of that, it changed the yield. And then if you put them, I thought, that's interesting. And then I found another researcher, and this person I'm going to see, and we're going to try to make a course because he's been trying to teach this. He's been doing it for like 15 years, where you use pyramids instead of using in frequencies, instead of using chemicals. And that's the point of what we're trying to do here is like, you know, everybody's going, you know, we like to pick up on the fear porn about, oh my gosh, that the supply chains are broken. And I started my world in saying the supply chains are broken. You know, we don't have fertilizer. We can't ship them over the thing. It's like, maybe the truth is that those are really pieces of great news. I can't ship toxic fertilizer.
Yes.
Maybe that's a really good piece of news where all of a sudden a farmer has no choice but to go into these alternatives and play around with that and start cleansing the soil, and, you know, growing CBD to cleanse the soil, then then using these pyramids, putting the seed in pyramids versus putting toxic chemicals, not going after the genetically modified seed. This is, to me, is just great news. Now, is there pain and suffering about the transition? Massively. And that's where we have to work together, and instead of going into the big corporates, downsize and put these more into community food growing, because that's what we're going to. But to me, it's like we have all of this tech that has a positive side, and then it's used for the negative. But to me, that's really the thesis here. How do we get this information out? And how do we take the things that are crumbling in society, which to me, all of it is really good news. If the banks fall, we've got to be really happy about that because they've been controlling us. We don't even own our money in the bank. You know, we've got to figure out different ways. We're getting there. But the transition, boy, is it painful. But if we're seeing, like, people like us who are seeing the future of the positive and creating that, it just helps everybody create that. And it's like, that's what we do.
Exactly. Well said. It's like with the whole pandemic business, you know, there was such an over-reliance on the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry. People would see them as gods and put them on a pedestal and say, they're going to cure me, da, 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 da. And this was, you know, as we've learned, often the inverted truth, you know, the opposite to the truth. So there had to be something that came in that was mammoth and that was, you know, could be envisaged as a catastrophe, which is like this whole pandemic business that is there to deconstruct that whole reliance and all this, you know, worshipping of these things that
Right.
were actually the opposite of what most people thought they were doing. You know, they don't, it is not an industry that cures people, it's an industry that perpetuates sickness. Um, you
For
know,
cash flow, for, yeah, cash flow, yeah.
exactly. So,
Mhm.
you know, we had to have something really big like that to come in for people to see what hasn't been working for humanity.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And so that's really what it is. It's like, so this is now a journey of like identifying what the true causes are. Well,
yes,
because once you break down and you know what the real issue is, you can fix any problem once you know what it is.
absolutely.
I think most of the issues that we face right now is that we actually don't know what the problem is.
Mm,
We've been told what the problem is to look here when it's really there. And we believe other people instead of really connecting in with source and being in the saying, ah, that's not it. I know what it is. And then finding these ways of understanding, like the truth is that we are frequencies, they're positive frequencies, we're powerful beings, we're creators. If we just identify that and do those natural things, which have really been the way that God created this planet to work. I mean, it's a beautiful, perfect ecosystem.
yes, yes.
And we keep
Like the
on
human body.
destroying.
The human body
Yeah.
hasn't got anything in it that was, you know, when they talk about junk DNA and all that,
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
understand it, but it's all highly purposeful and there for reasons, but it hasn't been activated yet in humanity to allow us
Yeah.
to reach our highest potential. So it's same sort of concept. I love what you're doing. I think that I guess the focus needs to be, doesn't it, on how you can help these trees and how we can find holistic, you know, it's like free energy, isn't it? You know, finding new ways of powering energy that are not damaging to the earth or that are going to have, you know, completely harmless, but are going to create the solution that we want.
So now the challenge is to work with these people about, so how do you then implement this? What are the right ways? Are there frequencies that you put into, trees, forests, plantations of trees and various things? Or do you input pyramids in different places? And, that's the trick about how you do it. And the first start here is to identify these things through my little lab here, and then work with these, the experts, and go to like various places. So being part of the community here, I know places that have, cultivate trees down here, and one group who is a charitable organization to focus on that. And then just do some experiments. So instead of saying the white paper and saying, here's the conclusion, you guys were wrong, it's like, let's show them how this works. That's the way to do it, I think.
Because you know how they've had these things, Lisa, where they attach them to plants and they can hear the sounds of the plants, you know? So there's ways like that that you can determine if plants are happy or they're not happy or they're flourishing.
Right.
I'm seeing classical music being played to plants. I think they'd really appreciate that. But
Well, you think about this. I mean, you're actually hitting on another thing that I identify as an issue. And that is I mean, I lived in New York and I still live in New York for a time. And it's a city of noise, but it's like an overexposure, overstimulation to noise. And music, like you said, classical music has a really calming effect. But, we've gone away from classical music. And why is that? Because there's a proclivity and an interest to go into electronic music or rock music and all of these things. But you go into stores, everywhere you go, you're attacked by sound. And those are frequencies. And those things are actually creating agitation in you.
Yeah.
And they say, well, the urban environment is the thing that creates agitation because you're too close to each other. No, I think it's artificially created with the frequencies and the sounds and the types of music that you're bombarded with. And it's like, you're energetically putting yourselves in harmony.
Yeah.
listen to a lot of that music. Listen, and I've loved it and I've enjoyed some of it. There's not much harmony in it, is there?
No, no, there isn't. If you really listen to your energy, or tune into your energy while you're listening to it, you can feel often a sort of like a discombobulation and a tenseness, and like a stress. And you know, even you think of hip hop, and or how that was influenced by the certain, you know, energies on the planet that are now becoming much more apparent. You know, those dark energies.
Well said, my dear. Well said. Yeah.
Infiltrated,
Yeah.
yes. And so I find too, with things like the city, you know, you've got concrete everywhere too, so there's an inability to ground and to connect with Mother Earth, and that again is disconnecting you, as well as the sound. And so you've got a lot of things happening simultaneously that are creating a disconnection from who we truly are and our divine essence.
Exactly. And I think, like, so once again, it's like the problem is that city living is bad. And that's the conclusion. When the truth is that no, because we are social and we need to have connection. The things that are bad are the stimuli, the negative stimuli that we're exposed to in those environments.
Yes.
And I find that, like, if I want to go get a massage, or when I go somewhere, I'm like, please turn off all music. I want to be in that silence. And that's what's like the beauty of like hiking in the trees, and you listen to things and you hear that voice of God, you hear that. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, you really are telling me so many amazing things. And
well, I've moved to an island, so you don't have to convince me. Wow. And it's quiet. Yeah. Wow. There's not a lot of noise. I'm next to a whole conservation area too, and just the silence, you know, the quietness is heaven compared to.
And we've been trained or taught to say silence and being is negative. It's like, wow, it's like the most important thing we can do right now as we go through these transitions in life, and to listen, to say, like, you know, how do we help each other? And it's like, if I can hear the trees saying, oh, this is, you know, I have a problem. If you can hear me, you can then see, you know, then you can listen, kind of thing. But I mean, listen, I'm into music. I was a classical musician as an undergrad, but I don't like there's that toxicity in vibration that we get through so many different sources. And you look at the way music hypnotizes and also creates such a sadness. Like, we focus in on those sad types of music, which I think they're soulful, but that also creates a different energy in us. Yeah.
Yes, and then that frequency goes out to the collective, and then we all feel it, and it just drops the collective frequency. Yeah, I think we need to be really mindful of all forms of energy that we're taking in at the moment, and just really connecting to energies that are raising and lifting us up. There's enough that can drag us down out there without us, you know, consciously connecting to it, you know.
Right. And that's the, you know, and that's the journey I'm on. I'm like, this is one of the key projects I want to work on through the lab here, and focus in, and like, this is the start of a journey, and I want to share the journey with everybody, because all of this stuff is not going to be from a centralized source of, we're going to give you something and you can go buy it. It's going to be like what you did, creation of a pyramid, creation of frequencies, and how the sound, like all of this stuff plays together. The Hamamoto's water experiments are the same thing. It's like positive energy creates a certain different sacred geometric shapes. How do you get the cells to be in that perfect harmony for these trees, which are life-giving to us? How do we, and in a way, we then take back our planet in a natural way, as opposed to curbing fluorocarbons, which we think are negative. You know, the truth is that none of the things that we say are, you know, limited supply are limited supply. Energy doesn't have to be charged for all of these things. It's going to be so interesting. So I hope to share the journey along the way.
Oh, I love that, Lisa. That would be brilliant. And I hate to use another pun, but we have to do it organically, don't we?
You know, if you can't do a bad pun every once in a while, I don't know what's going on.
We've got at least 3 in this video.
Exactly. I love it. I love it. I love
Funny.
it. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's actually kind of exciting. Like
Yeah,
all the things, like, and I know that a lot of people, it's right now, there's so much stress about the things that are breaking. I just am constantly holding the energy about, gosh, why is that that's breaking? It sounds like there's always a divine purpose for it. And this is great news that fertilizer can't be done. And I know people are going to say, this woman is absolutely crazy. These farms can't produce food. It's like, how else are we going to switch? If you don't break it, you can't change it.
of course. I mean, there's
Now,
so much stuff that's not good for us now in our food because of the soil and the degradation and all the
yeah,
pesticides and everything else that's gone into food. We have to find different ways to be
yeah,
able to have food that is pure and
yeah,
has all the nourishment in it from the soil that was
yeah.
meant to be there in the first place.
Yeah, one of the other things is really exploring is that there's a field of aeroponic farming, not hydroponic, aeroponic, where you're really not using the soil. So that gets around that. That said, I've looked at, there's a couple of big companies, one's in Italy and one's in the US. And what they do is they create photosynthesis through LED lighting and use algorithms of the lighting to perfect the right amount of time. So light is energy, which is energy for us too, for the plant to create to create and grow. And they don't use soil. But there are two things that I haven't identified yet, and I need to research. And I would, if anybody knows anybody to help with that, I'd be really open to exploring that.
Yes, please
Number one,
contact me and I'll pass it on to Lisa. Yes, or I can
what
give your details to
seed?
Lisa if you like
Sure,
to.
sure. What seed are you using? Because that seed, and maybe you start out through putting the seed in through the pyramids, but it can't be like here. I'm growing ancient grains. I'm just going to plant a crop of the ancient grain, which is very low in gluten. The
Is that
issues that
like
people have had are high. It's
is
regular wheat, but it's low gluten. It's the original seed.
is
And
that
then the
can
other,
I ask Lisa, is that like the
sure.
heirloom seeds? You know, the heirloom seeds that you can buy, which are the
Yeah, but here there's a library of all the ancient original seeds because they
ah,
take their history very seriously,
yeah,
which is wonderful.
yeah.
Then the other part is they say, how like when you look at somebody's product and they kind of tell you a little bit, but not enough, but just enough to say, I don't know what you're really doing there.
There's a lot of
A
those,
nutrient, they add a nutrient.
right?
And I think that, so like, I think that we should all be growing like our food in our homes. And I have this thought, like, I'm going to sell my apartment in New York and I want to create a new type of living where you buy a building and it's self-sustaining, where you grow your own food. Like, why aren't we growing our own food on the roof or inside? And you've got all these aeroponic systems that we can put in through the building, and then you become self-sufficient. I think that's going to be a model. That's another model I'm trying to get out there.
Brilliant.
But what is the nutrient pack?
Mm. Do you mean once it's grown, what is the nutrient level
No,
within?
what's the nutrient that you feed the plant whilst growing outside of? And until I can reverse engineer that,
Right.
I'm still on the fence because I just don't know. I don't know. And I don't want to be perpetuating something and saying, oh, this is better, this is sort of the answer, when I haven't really done my diligence on that yet. So that's, I think there's a lot of potential in aeroponic farming. We have to have a period of time where we allow the soil to regenerate. And that's where Zach Bush is really working really, really diligently in that area. But then we've got to have something in the interim. And then I think we combine it where we're not depleting the soil and we have different ways of doing it. And technology can be good. The LED lights can be really good. But how do we then figure out what the right seed is and what the nutrient is?
I've got just a quick question. It's probably a basic question, but I've always thought that LED lighting was a bit not harmful is not the right word, but perhaps not the best for people's health because it has that flashing effect and we have been told that LED lighting is not good. So would that be also potentially not good maybe for the growing
Crops, yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't know enough about that, but I can give a couple of points that, because I think it's an excellent question that I'll dig further into, is that there are positive LED and negative LED, obviously. There's the spectrum of light. And I originally started doing some research with a colleague where we were looking at the use of LED lighting in fabrics and different things, because it's used in cosmetics. It's used for us as humans, is very positive. Like there's the red LED light for certain things, blue LED light for other things. So I think there's a range, and the range, you have to be really careful about that range. But LED is sort of like a plasma. And I remember one of the things, I was working with a semiconductor company that has a technology in ultrasound, which is a beautiful, can be really positive, but can also be, you can have a range of that too, that can be negative. But the whole thesis with ultrasound is it does no harm. And I came across a company that patented all of the LED technology to create your screens.
Right.
They're just a brilliant business model of identify the technology, constantly improve upon it, have more patents, and they license it out. And it was intriguing to me because that tying it together with the LED is a plasma, and that's a plasma technology. And if we're listening to those who are really researching what our sun is, it's actually plasma, not what we think, this hydrogen ball, that mass of something.
Yeah.
So LED seems to be mimicking what the sun does as a nutrient source. But it's a really good question about what range that is, and I'm going to explore it. So thank you for that. But I hope that gives a little bit of an insight, like how I would look at it and to explore it. But it's a really great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all so coming together holistically for me, talking to you in this way as well, because I've been told that with my energy, I'll be exploring sound and light therapies in the future. I'll be, because I'm a singer, so I work with my voice. My voice is healing when I sing, and light, and I know I've come intuitively from realms of sound and light that are, of a high vibration, where there's all pearlescent lights and all these beautiful sounds and things, and that I will be working with that sort of frequency type technology, I guess you could call it, in the future. So that's fascinating. It all aligns with,
that's great. I think that's really fantastic. It's healing for so many different things. You're right. The voice is amazing. It really is.
Thank you. And the colors, you can utilize particular colors to work with. So for example, you have a lemon, and the lemons resonate with the color pink because it's got the qualities in it, and the the nutrients, in a sense, or the colors in that color pink, for example. This is just, taking a random example. That could be the right thing for the lemon. You know what I mean? Different colors.
That's so interesting that you talk about the frequency of colors, because that's another thing I've been playing around with. It's just amazing, the synchronicities. And it's so funny because I had an Akashic reading, and it just said that you are always with color, and I play around and I always wear color. I don't wear black, and obviously they had to kick me out of New York because I don't wear black.
And also you're talking about olives, and you've got the most lovely olive color on today.
Thank you. And green is like, it resonates, and it's like they said, like, you're supposed to wear color, don't ever wear black, and black is not you, because energetically, I just know that as I walk through an airport or do something, I always have like a colorful shoe. Like today, my shoes are a lemon yellow, and I'm looking at like people, it just makes them smile. Yes. The energetics of color make people change their perception. I love that you're doing that. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Really, really good. Yeah. Oh, amazing. Amazing. Fantastic. I really liked it. It's been a pleasure to talk about all.
Oh, it's so lovely.
It sounds like there's just so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many synchronicities there. So, well, we must follow this with whenever you want to share anything, Lisa, please, let me know, and I'd love to be able to share with the audience And I love what you're doing, because, you know, it is all now about restoration of the planet too. It's not only cleaning up,
Yeah.
you know, what is not working, but it's also bringing in alternatives, so that when it crashes the whole system, and it sort of is eliminated, then we have other things to replace it that are much more in alignment with where we want to go and who we want to be. So this is, you know, crucial, the work you're doing. Thank you.
No, the pleasure. And it's, you know, I'm happy to share, because most of the time I just think, well, I think of these ideas, people think I'm a little bit, you know, out there. But,
I actually think you need to think that way as we go forward in the future, because it's multidimensional thinking, and that's what we need.
Yeah. I mean, and there was definitely a reason that, you know, being in the venture community, you're always looking for new innovation. And there was always a pattern I saw there, that it was never just one inventor that came up with the idea. It's when the universe and God wants it to come out, it's seeded to many.
Yes.
Those who are listening to it.
I've had examples of that. Collective consciousness. Yeah.
I mean, you think about all the major breakthroughs and inventions that we've had, they've been seeded, people, not just one. And everybody, you know, if you want to listen to it, then you go, you know, so just, you know, open to the amazing divine inspiration that is permeating us right now. And, you know, lead on and do that. It sounds like you're doing that very much as well.
Thank you. Yay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. So beautiful to talk to you. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, we'll touch base again, hopefully not too far away, and see how you're going with it all. And can I leave your perhaps details for if people want to find out more about your research or support what you're doing or anything?
Yeah, let me send over to you. I have a channel called Questioning the New. Actually, I have a Telegram channel that would be probably good. And I'll send over the link on that. Okay.
Oh, that'll be brilliant. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. All right, terrific. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And thank you for the beautiful greens. It makes my heart smile to see all the green.
Chose it especially for you. I thought you'd like it.
I did. I loved it. Ciao. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you, darling. Bye.
Ciao.